Welcome to the Property Guide and happy Diwali to you and your family. We're celebrating Diwali this year with Niranjan Hiranandani in his beautiful home in Powai. Niranjan, thank you so much for spending time with us. It's a wonderful time in this market because we now have a new state government, and I remember the last time we talked, you talked about the fact that the state government is such an important part of realty because so many of the subjects and so many of the issues are state subjects right now. If I were to ask you to put down a checklist of priorities for this new government in the state, what would that be? What's top of mind for you?
Happy Diwali to you and to all the viewers of this lovely show. I think basically you have to understand that the country has reached to roti and kapda, but makan certainly in a city, great city like Mumbai and even Maharashtra in India is a far dream in terms of affordable housing. Lot needs to be done in the next few years, and I'm sure that this new government will really do it. Land is a state subject. So the state government becomes a very important part of this progress. First of all, we have to understand that you have to see what is the needs of the people. What are the numbers of people that we have, and how can we house them? And at the same time, we have to see, can we get the supply out in the next few years to make the 25 million houses which Mr. Narendra Modi has committed to be done by 2020 or 2022 in these 8 years. Now, if we have to achieve that, we need to move the monstrosity of regulation that has strangulated the industry. So you go from table to desk to table to politician to bureaucrat and you name it. So first you need to deregulate the industry. We need 52 permissions to start a building. Then to continue the building you need another 10-20 permissions. To occupy the building you need another 20 permissions. This actually has become a disaster. So first you need to sit down and decide, how can I reduce that regulation from 100 such permissions down to maybe 4 or 5?
It's interesting. At a time when we're looking at, you're asking for lower regulation, we're talking about a new regulation bill. And of course, there is a view in the market that that's exactly what the market needs right now. And Mr. Venkaiah Naidu, you're speaking in Hyderabad, said it will be a regulation and development bill.
Exactly.
It won't be purely regulation.
Yes.
So, since you're part of the group that's collaborating with the government right now on the bill, tell us where it's at. Will we see it first of all in the next session of Parliament? What is the likelihood?
I think it's not important to see that it is brought in tomorrow. What it needs is a proactive bill which works. Let me tell you, this bill talks about how you can penalize the developers, how you can bring about transparency, how can you do this against the developer. I'm all for transparency. You must have it. And if somebody violates the rules, he must be penalized. But many times there is victimization, which can put a person into prison for no good reason. That's the kind of regulation they're bringing about, which we don't need. But on transparency, absolutely I'm with the bill. I think it's necessary, it's important, and it should, all plans should be put on the net so that everybody can see it, whether he's a customer, he's an outsider, he doesn't even have to get an RTI for the purposes of getting the information. All he should do is go on the net and be able to do it. So to that extent, yes. But it doesn't take care of an officer who comes and sabotages the work which is happening. The Inspector Raj which you have removed in the labour reforms which Mr. Narendra Modi has just done, I think you need to do the same about deregulating real estate. If you want to produce 25 million houses, you have to remove 25 million multiplied by 52 permissions that you need to get. Can you imagine the corruption that is going to happen if you don't allow that to be removed? How will you move ahead?
Do you think also through all of this, when we're talking about transparency and there's such a large need for it, I'll tell you that customers on the ground always think that builders overinflate prices. The prices in Mumbai are ridiculous. It might be because we don't know the breakup. We don't know what your margins are. We don't know what it costs to get the permission. We don't know what the cost of land is. Is there a need perhaps to break that out and tell your customer, this is what it's costing me to build this house for you?
Do you know what is the breakup of the cost of your dress? Or my kurta churidar, or the cost, what it costs the airline to produce? or the cost of a mobile phone or airtime for a mobile? You never ask that breakup because you're making affordable houses. Second, you're creating surpluses. If you get surpluses of clothing, surpluses of aviation travel availability, low cost, high cost, middle cost, business class, first class, and the lot. Once you get all these segments into place together and create surpluses, you won't worry about the cost because the cost will come down. What is being done purposely by the politicians and the bureaucracy is to strangulate adequate production. The day you produce adequate number of houses, like it's done in Noida. Today you will find houses in Noida will always be affordable because you have created the volume of houses in the affordable sector. That's why you get affordable housing in the NCR region, which is not available in the Mumbai region.
But you yourself as a builder have always leaned towards the luxury or the upper end of the spectrum.
Listen, you know what happens? We all gravitate towards what is making reasonable money and profits. I bought a land which I thought was going to be for affordable housing. When we started working on the cost of the whole thing, we found that 33% of the cost of affordable housing will go in taxes. The land values had gone up and it was just impossible for us to get replacement cost of that land. So we had to move into higher end housing than what we were doing before.
The urban development minister has also said that developers have to think out of the box and come up with solutions for affordable housing. Is that technically just hitting the ball into your court and saying think of something, think of how?
No, I think
ideas right
yes, he is 100% right.
Okay.
And I fully am with him that in this segment of affordable housing, we need to look at differential technology. We need to see that the multiple tiers of organizations that we have created have to come down. We need to, in fact, let me give you another example. Let's take Taj Mahal hotels. Taj Hotels has the luxury hotels, palaces and other things, and it also has the Ginger, which is the low cost, and both run equally well. Take the case of low cost airlines, Jet Air. Jet Air runs the business, the full fare paying passengers, and also the low cost, which is the Jet Connect or the Jet Light. And take that low cost airlines today make more money than the full fare thing. So it's not that you're not going to make money in low cost, but land should be affordable. The FSI needs to be increased, infrastructure needs to be created, which is a commitment which this new government has given for the purposes of improving metro cities and other cities where infrastructure is going to improve. If you bring the combination of this, affordable housing can be done. It has to be a marriage between the government and industry to deliver production. Large quantities of houses need to be produced quickly and efficiently. Less needs to be done in the bureaucracy and inspection raj, which we need to cut out completely in the real estate field, and see to it that we need to do it both at the central government and more at the state government level. That's why it's important that the state government becomes more effective in terms of housing.
All right, so a marriage between industry and the government, and as they walk down the aisle, we'll find out if that will in any way help the delays that customers are facing trouble with. That's on the other side of the break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back and happy Diwali to you. We're spending Diwali with Niranjan Hiranandani, who's telling us what the country and the city of Mumbai in particular needs right now to make homes affordable for us all. Niranjan, the last time we spoke, you talked about the fact that you'd like real estate to have the industry status. Again, Mr. Naidu has now turned around and said, I don't think industry status is going to help. What we should be looking at is preferential interest rates for the housing sector. Is that the solution? Would you have rather had the status instead?
It's what we call an infrastructure status. So what we really need is to see that financing is available to us as an industry, similar to what is done for long-term projects like roads, infrastructure, that's given long-term funding, which is 10 to 15 years. When we put up projects today and the banks give you 5 years or 6 years funding, 2 years, 3 years goes away in getting permissions. You get hardly 3 years. how can you complete the infrastructure and the buildings in the projects in 3 to 4 years? It's not possible. While the banks are constrained today to give short-term funding, they're not allowed to give long-term funding. So what Mr. Venkaiah Naidu is saying is 100% right. We need to create a financial status, and we call it infrastructure status, because all infrastructure projects in India are given long-term funds, while we in real estate are given short-term funds. So what we need to do is roll it around again, and again go to the banks or other financial institutions in order to get the money. And if you hit a downward trend in the market, at that point of time you're stuck, because you can't pay the first round and you don't have the time or the luxury to complete the project. So you're actually stuck and got into a bind. So what Mr. Venkaiah Naidu has correctly said, and we need Mr. Jaitley as much to support us in this particular issue, that we need to create infrastructure status for housing, and if that has happened, we'll get long-term funds from them, and that will be done.
I do believe he also mentioned the fact that the finance minister is in agreement with him about this, provided they're talking only about affordable housing and not the luxury market at all. I also want to understand from you, we've had a rough couple of years for real estate. Has it become easier for you to raise funding? Has the cost of funding come down a little bit? Has sentiment improved on the developer's end? Because we know customers are not yet ready to open their wallets, but is life easier for you?
Lovely Diwali time that the interest in real estate is just hitting the roof. I get calls from people all over the world asking me what are the opportunities of investing into real estate. They're so excited, especially after Mr. Narendra Modi's sojourn to America and Japan and all these places. The excitement all over the world in terms of investments into India is very high. So there is that. Internally, there's a wait and watch approach. People are still waiting to invest in a large way into real estate. But contrary to what people are talking, commercial real estate has started growing up. Companies are now willing to take larger projects. Corporate offices also are a sign of the day, and that's a positive which we are seeing. Second, we also see IT companies coming back into purchasing. So what was missing for some time, or it had reduced quite substantially, IT companies are again going into the race for whatever it is. What will require to be re-looked at, and here I think Nirmala Sitharaman's, the Honorable Minister, needs to intervene. Special economic zones were given a backward status, in the sense both in terms of taxes as well as the progressive ideas that needed to be looked at in terms of, let's say, non-processing and other things like that. Plus the MAT and other things which were brought in, contrary to what was the statement both by the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister at that time. And I think, and I'm hoping, that if we can get the SEZ tax-free status again for 5 to 10 years, I think that will be another boom. So I see 2015 as a growth period tremendously, both in the residential and commercial side. At least we as a company are gearing up to move forward, and we expect at least a 20-25% growth in the next year.
All right, 20-25% in the next year. That's optimistic. There's also some talk in North Block right now about the possibility that insurance and pension funds might be allowed to invest in long-term real estate, like we talked about before the break. How likely is that to happen in the next year or so, and what will that mean for the industry?
It will mean a lot. But let me put it across. That's thanks to SEBI. SEBI has brought in the REITs, the Real Estate Investment Trust, and also the infrastructure investment bonds which are going to come up. And I think that's going to make a huge difference to rented commercial premises and residential premises. But commercial will, of course, get a higher rating in terms of investments worldwide and whatever. We expect that about at least an addition of about $10 billion a year is expected to come in. But of course, there are 3 riders for REITs to be done. SEBI has finished its, completed its all the regulation which is there. Mr. Jaitley needs to make an amendment in the budget, because there has been a gap about the capital gains tax for the purposes of transfer of property to the REIT, one. Second, stamp duty at the state level needs to be rectified. Just now it's 5%, nobody will put into a REIT with 5% stamp duty. It will have to be like a mortgage, which is 0.1 or 0.5, depending on various states have different mortgage rates. And the third, there is a pass-through which is available for the purposes of the REIT, but that has not been given. Complete pass-through has not been given in the budget which came in, but of course that was too early for the government to have done anything, so we expect this in February. If that happens, a large amount of FDI, pension funds, long-term funds, as you talked about, will come into the business of industry, and which will provide liquidity to a large number of companies who are lacking liquidity today. And second, also the fact that there will be an exit for many of the FDI which was invested in earlier years, 2006-07. So they'll have an exit route through this thing. So we are expecting a large amount of funding to come in besides the FDI route through the REITs.
There is some tinkering as well with FDI in real estate right now. The finance minister is considering it. What changes would you like to see?
I think basically what you really need to do is to check up that can they remove the lock-in period or reduce the lock-in period, because a large number of people, if the projects are completed, then obviously they would like to do it. So instead of just making it 3 years, etc., can it be a shorter period of 1 year or 2 years for this purpose? But I see the rationale of the finance ministry, because what they want is actually development. They don't want speculative money to come in, and that's why they're locking in for a period of 3 years, and I see the reason and rationale behind that. But a large number of investors want a shorter period so that they would be able to encash if the projects are completed. Government has already reduced the area, which is the minimum area which is required to be done, so that's already happened. So I think there's a positive flow into both these things in terms of the regulation and the interest of FDI, of investments into the country again.
I'll be honest with you, we have got a few emails about customers who've had trouble with delays on projects run by Hiranandani from Bangalore, from the Bannerghatta project. There have been a couple of emails about the Hebbal project as well, and of course the Chennai project because of the HIRCO. Tell us what the status is right now, and what the company is doing to expedite things on the ground.
As you know that in the case of the HIRCO project, we could not get additional funding from HIRCO PLC, and tried to convince those people that we needed more funds in terms of equity or debt or whatever it is. We didn't get the necessary cooperation. The banks had to foreclose. In the process, I had to intervene, then take over the projects through the bank's foreclosure route and through SAFEMA, and I've taken over the Chennai project in April of this year, and we took over Panvel last week. So I'm hoping that the customers which are delayed, and we are very unhappy that our brand was used or misused at that point of time, and we hope to satisfy those customers where delays have taken place. I'm not aware about the details of the Bangalore one because it's looked after by my brother, but about Chennai and Panvel, we'll certainly try to do it. I can't catch up the time because we've lost 2.5 years in terms of the delay, but certainly the customers will get the product which we have committed.
I have another very quick question for you. We've talked so much about 100 smart cities. There's been a lot of speculation about what these smart cities will do, what makes a city smart in particular. Now, there's also talk about the fact that because cities like Mumbai need to be decongested so desperately, they will be looking at satellite townships, Thane Panvel being ideal examples of something like that. Now, since you've had such a large hand in constructing what's going on in Thane at this point, what would a Thane or a Panvel or a Vasai Virar need to be a satellite smart township to Mumbai?
The answer is very simple. Infrastructure, 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 and infrastructure. You need water, you need electricity, you need roads, you need metros, you need transport. And if you look at the manifestos of both the BJP and the Shiv Sena, you will find that they are talking about this infrastructure also. So I think there is a good direction that has already come in the manifesto of the state government, and we hope that that implementation will make a difference, because you can't have projects with concrete buildings, with no roads, no water, no schools, no metro, no communication, and expect people to habitat such locations. Not possible. It's inhuman. So what is good and great is that the concentration of the state government should be to build infrastructure, and hence townships and internal infrastructure for all these townships and projects can be done by the developers themselves, or by MADA or by SIDCO or by MMRDA in terms of various manners which they are already doing and should definitely increase their ambit of work. So if government can focus on great infrastructure, they are anyway charging huge development charge. You know, we are the most taxed real estate business in the world.
This is a general impression that you're making a lot of money.
In an affordable house of 3,600 rupees per foot, 1,200 rupees is tax. It's ridiculous. No country in the world here, local municipality puts high taxes, government puts stamp duty, we put development charge, government puts service tax on under construction buildings. Government of India should be hammered for that purpose. I mean, I buy a house which is under construction on installments because I can't afford ready and I have to pay a service tax. But if I have an occupation certificate and I can pay one-time payment, no service tax. It's crazy. You penalize the person who pays by installments. I can't understand such laws and regulations and taxes. So we are just tax, and we don't understand that if you want to create that segment of housing which is affordable, and if you want to create rental housing stock, you can't do it with the kind of taxes. Municipal taxes in Mumbai is just too high. You need to rationalize all these things. What has happened, everybody thought this is a bakra to be butchered. Yes. So, you know, bali ka bakra, they have not taken eggs, golden eggs from there. All the other countries in the world lay great infrastructure and keep on taking golden eggs from it. Look at Dubai, look at Singapore, look at Hong Kong, look at all these countries. They create great infrastructure and they get monetary amounts and investments and employment through the people. Here we do the reverse. You tax the real estate and try to do it. Tax above, take corruption below. So all that is taking place just now. We need to change that, make it simple, follow the international standards of best practices in construction. Of course, if somebody is not following the regulation, you should penalize him. But you can't do it without having development infrastructure in the place.
All right, development infrastructure, so important. Quick break. On the other side, we'll talk about innovations in housing and what's new in the real estate market. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching the Property Guide on ET Now. Thank you for staying with us and happy Diwali to you. We're spending Diwali with Niranjan Hiranandani. Niranjan, I want to understand this from you. This is a beautiful space that we're in right now, and you're known for creating beautiful spaces. And you're one who travels on a regular basis looking for what's new in the market overseas. Tell us what you're giving your customers indoors with terms of, you know, whether it's the kitchens or the bedrooms or the balconies or the views and terms like that. What's new with the Hiranandani offering at this point?
The good part is that we have a lot of technology now into the new buildings. We're able to construct faster. I think we are always the cutting edge of technology in terms of design, in terms of aesthetics, in terms of utilization of space. We make the designs more user friendly, so the lady who walks into the kitchen has a better space even though it's the same space. We give lots of amenities which are built in, which were not there. A lot of systems are put into place, and I think what you will see is generally beautiful aesthetics. So it's aesthetically much more appealing and makes you feel great once you come into a Hiranandani house. It's quite different.
It certainly is. Well, Niranjan, I wish you a wonderful year and a wonderful Diwali. I hope you hit the target of 25% growth, maybe even more, and we manage to iron out all of the issues that we just talked about.
I think Narendra Modi has committed to Make India. I hope he makes houses too, because it should not only be the industry part of the whole thing. If he makes the houses, I think, and he makes the homes, and we promise him full support in this segment of even affordable housing, I think we will be able to make a great India.
All right. So a home for every Indian family by 2022. That's the target, and the clock is ticking on it. We're going to track it very closely for you at ET Now. But in the meantime, enjoy your weekend and happy Diwali.